They say a man ain't worth much without land, money, or a name folks speak with respect. If that's true, then I wasn't worth spit the day I stumbled into Dry Hollow, boots near worn through and stomach tighter than a barbed wire fence. I traded my last clean shirt for a half bag of beans 2 towns back, and my horse Blue looked worse than me, ribs showing like bones straining against hide. But he carried me without complaint, same as always. I hadn't planned on staying long. Dry Hollow wasn't a place you laid roots unless you had nowhere else to dig. Dust settled on everything like a judgment. The saloon leaned crooked, the church bell hadn't rung in years, and the sheriff's office door hung off one hinge like it had given up hope. I was passing through, looking for a hot meal or a job that wouldn't get me killed. I hitched Blue near the feed store and wandered behind the saloon, drawn by a hushed sort of noise. Not music, not laughter. A different tone altogether. Men murmuring, something tense in the air, like poker stakes were flesh instead of coin. I moved slow, keeping to the shadows. Why saw stop me cold? There were 3 girls standing side by side on a rotting porch behind the saloon, flanked by a woman with stiff blonde hair and eyes that could freeze rain. She wore lace gloves and smiled like she was hosting tea, but her voice curled like smoke. Hard workers, all of them. Orphans, technically. My late husband's brats, God rest his soul. I can't keep feeding mouths with nothing to show. They're up for placement. She didn't say the word, but every man in that tight circle knew what she meant. The tallest girl, 14 maybe, had sharp eyes and a jaw set like a grown woman's. Her hand was behind the smallest one's back, steadying her. The little one, couldn't be more than 5, had tears dried into the dirt on her cheeks. The middle girl stared at nothing, like she'd figured out it hurt less not to see. A man stepped forward, finger hooked in his belt loop. "What's your ask for the big one?" The woman's smile sharpened. $2. Or trade, if you got horseshoes or salt. My blood turned to fire. I stepped forward before my brain caught up. "I'll take all 3. Heads turned. The woman blinked at me like I'd barked nonsense. "Excuse me." "You heard me," I said, voice low but sure. "All 3. I'll take 'em." A couple of the men muttered. Some laughed. The woman's smile cracked. "You got the coin for that, stranger?" I didn't. Not even close. But I reached into my coat and dropped what I had into my palm. 2 silver coins, a pocket knife, and a brass spur. Then I tossed my reins forward. And the horse. He's old but loyal. One man let out a low whistle. "You serious? That's near everything you own." "I'm not bartering lives," I said. "I'm buying them out of yours." The woman studied me, her lips thin. I don't know if it was the fire in my voice or the look in her girl's eyes, but something shifted. Maybe she figured I wouldn't last the week with 3 mouths to feed and no plan. Maybe she didn't care. She gathered my offerings with gloved fingers and gave a shallow nod. "Fine," she said. "They're yours. Good riddance." The girls didn't move at first, like they were waiting for the real deal to start, the kind with shackles and hard hands. I crouched low, trying not to spook them. "What's your name, darling?" I asked the oldest. She eyed me like a rattler ready to strike. "Clara." I looked to the quiet one. "And you?" She whispered, "June." The little one clung to Clara's dress and didn't speak. "That's Millie," Clara said. "She don't talk much since Pa died." "I'm Colt," I said, rising. "We're gonna ride out quiet. Fast. No looking back." Clara studied me a moment longer, then gave a single nod. She took June's hand, then scooped Millie up into her arms. I walked them to Blue, helped them mount, and led the reins on foot, not daring to look behind. We cleared the edge of town by dusk. The sun bled red across the horizon, and the wind carried the scent of dry grass and distance. When we finally stopped beneath a twisted cottonwood tree, I built a fire with shaking hands. My coat became their blanket, my saddle their pillow. Clara didn't speak much as they settled in, but just before sleep, as the fire crackled low, she turned to me. "Why'd you do it?" she asked, voice wary. I didn't answer right away. I watched the flames dance in June's eyes and the way Millie breathed deep against her sister's chest. "Because no one else did," I said, and I couldn't stomach walking away. Clara stared at me a moment longer, then lay back without a word. That night, under a sky wide enough to hold every mistake I'd ever made, I realized I'd bought more than trouble. I'd bought purpose. And though I had no gold, no map, and no right to raise anyone, I felt something I hadn't in years. Needed. And that, Lord help me, was enough to keep riding. We rode for 3 days with nothing but dry biscuits, creek water, and silence between us. The girls didn't complain, not once, though I caught Clara casting glances at my frayed boots, at the way I skipped meals pretending I wasn't hungry. June barely spoke above a whisper, and Millie hadn't said a word since the night I took them. Still, they rode steady behind me, all three balanced on Blue's tired back like driftwood on a swollen river, floating forward because there was no going back. I didn't know where I was taking them. I didn't have kin left nor land to claim. But I knew what I was keeping them from, and that was enough to keep one boot in front of the other. Claire was watching everything. She wasn't just guarding her sisters. She was studying me, sizing up every move I made, like she expected me to trade them off for something better the second it suited. I didn't blame her. A man who buys children from a snake like Darla Hemmings don't look like a savior. He looks like a different kind of trouble. The morning of the 4th day, we hit a stretch of dry canyon where even the cacti looked tired. Blue's legs started to wobble, and I knew he wouldn't make another full day underweight. I pulled up near a crooked cedar stump and helped the girls down. Clara jumped off before I could offer a hand. "Where are we going?" she asked, arms crossed. "Anywhere that ain't dry hollow," I said. "That's all I got figured so far." "That's not much of a plan." "No," I said, meeting her eyes. "But I reckon it's better than what you had before." Clara looked away, jaw tight. Millie reached for her hand and squeezed. We camped early, under a sliver of moon and sky thick with stars. I started a fire with dry brush and flint and handed them the last of our beans. I pretended I'd eaten already. June noticed. "You didn't take any," she said softly. "I ain't hungry," I lied. "You're lying," she replied without accusation, just certainty. She handed me half her portion. "You saved us. We can share." It hit me like a boot to the chest. I took the tin and nodded, grateful without knowing how to say it. That night, as they curled beneath the blanket that used to be my coat, I sat watch, turning things over in my head. There'd been a time I thought about having a family. Before the war. Before I came home to find my sister, Ellie, burned up in the wagon fire. I should have been there to prevent. She'd been 9, all fire and laughter. And I'd failed her. Walked the earth since then like a man trying to disappear. But now, with these 3 shadows breathing beside me, I felt that old ache again, the one that whispered maybe I wasn't past saving. The next town was 3 days' walk. Ashridge. Mining town, mostly rough folks, but I had an old friend there, Jed Colton, a blacksmith who owed me more than a few favors. If anyone would take in 3 near-starving girls and a broke cowboy with nothing to his name, it'd be him. We moved early, sun still bleeding over the hills. Clara asked fewer questions that day. She helped Millie on and off the horse without prompting and even passed me a canteen when I looked ready to drop. June found wild berries off the trail. Millie gave her first smile when Clara let her hold one. We made camp just outside a dry creek bed that evening. As I was laying twigs for a fire, Clara sat down beside me. Not close, just enough to show it wasn't by accident. "You got family?" she asked. "Had a sister," I said. "Long time ago. She died." I nodded. "Ow, fire." She didn't say sorry. She just looked at the flames I was building and said, "You don't talk much, but you don't lie either." That's rare. I didn't know what to say to that, so I'll let silence do the talking. "I don't trust easy," she said after a while. "But June and Millie, they already look at you like you're something safe. I can't afford to be wrong for them." I looked over at the firelight, touching her cheekbones, at the strength wrapped around her like old bark on a young tree. And I saw Ellie again, not in her face, but in the fierce way she loved. "You ain't wrong," I said. "I ain't much, but I'll never leave you. Not ever." She nodded once. It wasn't surrender. It was belief, carefully granted. The stars came out heavy that night, and for the first time since I met them, all 3 girls slept with their heads resting close to mine. The desert wind whispered through the rocks, soft and low like a lullaby. I stayed awake until the moon passed its peak, hand resting near the grip of my revolver, eyes on the dark edges of the trail ahead. I didn't have gold. I didn't have a home. But I had 3 reasons to keep breathing. And come hell or high water, I'd get them to something better. A broke cowboy bought 3 sisters their stepmother tried to sell. What he did next became legend. Total word count for 1,000 words. Narrative style, first person from the cowboy's perspective. Tone, gritty, emotional, redemptive, quietly heroic. Main themes, found family, sacrifice, unexpected kindness, justice, and redemption. Setting the scene, dusty border town called Dry Hollow, a place where law rides slow and men ride hard. Narrator introduction, cowboy named Colt McCrae, a broke drifter with more ghosts than coin. He's in town trying to trade an old saddle for a week's food. Inciting incident. Colt stumbles across a hushed backyard sale happening behind the saloon. A cruel stepmother, Darla Hemmings, is trying to offload responsibility for her late husband's daughters. The girls. Clara, 14, protective, tough for her age. June, 9, quiet and watchful. Millie, 5, clings to Clara, innocent and scared. Darla's intent. She doesn't name it, but it's clear she's selling them to men with bad intentions under the guise of domestic help. Colt intervenes. With only a few silver coins and his horse as leverage, Colt offers to buy all 3. He makes it clear they're coming with him to safety, not slavery. Internal conflict. Colt is broke and rootless. What's he going to do with 3 girls? On the run, Colt takes the girls and rides out of Dry Hollow at night. Darla threatens to send men after him. Building trust. At first, the girls mistrust Colt, especially Clara. But he's gentle, makes them a fire, cooks what little food he has, even gives them his coat. Flashback. Colt remembers his own little sister, Ellie, who died in a wagon fire years ago. He failed her. This feels like a second chance. Hardship. They face storms, near starvation, and Colt sells his saddle for beans and boots for Clara. Moment of warmth. One night, Millie falls asleep in Colt's lap. June hums a tune, and Clara finally says, "Thank you." He thinks, didn't matter if I had no gold or good name. Those girls looked at me like I was worth something. Danger returns. Darla's hired riders catch Colt near the mining town of Ashridge. He fights them off with help from an old war buddy, Jed Colton, now a blacksmith. Emotional scene. Clara helps Colt bandage a wound. She says, "We didn't have to do any of this." He replies, "Didn't feel like a choice." Felt like, right? Legal reckoning. Colt brings the girls to the sheriff, Mae Bellamy, one of the only female sheriffs in the state. She says the law won't protect them without evidence of wrongdoing. Colt's dilemma. He could disappear, or he could risk it all to give them a real life. What he does. Colt publicly exposes Darla at the church gathering in Ashridge, telling the town what she tried to do. Others come forward. She's done this before. Climax. The town sides with Colt. Darla is arrested and carted off. The girls are granted his guardianship under emergency writ from Sheriff Bella gave me a reason to plant roots and believe again. Closing image. The 4 of them watching the sun dip behind the hills, Clara resting her head on his shoulder.